Today on Faith's Edge, episode 25, real estate investor and the do-over guy, Matt Theriault, joins us to discuss his amazing rags to riches story.
Well, this former president of the United States, George W. Bush, or is it? Maybe it's just John Morgan, George W. Bush imperpolator. But hey, I love On Faith's Edge with Joe Taylor. This guy rocks.
This is On Faith's Edge, where engaging, enlightening, and entertaining content brings us closer to living an authentic faith. We'll talk faith and life with people in business and entertainment as we work out the space where God and life collide. On Faith's Edge. And now your host, Joe Taylor.
Oh yeah, that's the fact, Jack. Matt Theriault has an amazing story. He's about as transparent and authentic as they come. I'm really glad you're here. Welcome back to On Faith's Edge. John chapter 20, verse 29. Then Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." Welcome to On Faith's Edge. My name is Joe Taylor, recovering atheist, and your servant in Jesus Christ. This is your place to hear conversations with people of faith in business and entertainment. From all walks of life and levels of success, they all have one thing in common. Like Matt Theriault, they believe in God, and they come here to talk about it. Last episode, I had a blast with George W. Bush impersonator extraordinaire John Morgan. His portrayal of President Bush is just uncanny. And his story, John's story, is great. If you didn't hear it, go back and listen to episode 24 at onfaithsedge.com/24. It's a great interview. On today's show, it's my pleasure to speak with Matt Theriault. After a successful tour of duty in the U.S. Marine Corps, Matt spent the next 13 years of his life in the music business running a small record label. He was fortunate to create a very comfortable existence for himself through music. But through a turn in the CD market, which you'll hear about, he found himself at the age of 34, flat broke and having to start life all over. He's now a successful real estate investor, author, and success coach that guides people through their very own life do-over. During the first part of our talk, we had a pretty spotty connection. We connected through Skype, and that just didn't sound good. You'll be able to hear it when you hear the interview, when you hear the first part of the interview. Then we changed to the cell phone, and while not the best quality, actually Matt's side of the conversation is much more clear, much better. So let's get right into the interview with Matt Theriault. Hello, Matt. Welcome to On Faith's Edge.
Hey, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. How about you, brother?
Good. Fantastic. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, I really appreciate you being here. First, Matt, I do want to say this. You are a Marine and a Desert Storm veteran. Thank you for your service, brother. And if only for that alone, I'm really honored to have you on the show.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And you're welcome.
As I said in the introduction, Matt, you are an author, success coach, and highly successful real estate investor. You have a real rags to riches story.
I do.
Tell us about that. Tell us your story.
Sure. Well, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I spent 15 years of my life in the music business. I had a small little record label with major label distribution. So we didn't do anything real big and noteworthy. We weren't on any award shows and didn't win any awards. But I'd figured out a way to turn 30,000, 40,000 selling projects into profitable ones. And if you know anything about the music business, if you sold 40,000 units, you'd probably get dropped. Well, actually, you would get dropped in a second. But I figured out how to do that profitably as long as I maintained a consistent release schedule. I did really well for myself. I employed friends, and the 20s were my roaring 20s, and I had a great formula, a great business, and was having fun, and life came really easily, and didn't think there was a thing in the world to worry about until one day the digital download came along, and I was rather naive to the internet. I just ignored it the whole time. This was in I think the early 90s. And we had a hip hop label, kind of a conscious underground vibe, wasn't the real mainstream. And what I noticed was, in hindsight, was that all the underground music, whether it was like an underground dance music or an underground hip hop music or underground rock music, that audience really embraced digital download before anybody else. And it essentially put us out of business in about 6 months. It happened really, really fast. And I found myself at age 34, flat broke, filed bankruptcy, went through a divorce, and was bagging groceries for $7 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a humbling experience, to say the least. And, those are the times when we get closest to God. And it was a 6-month-long pity party. Lots of prayers, lots of God, why me? This couldn't be what you envisioned for me. And
right.
And there was one day where it just kind of came along. There I had this moment in line of the grocery store. That day someone was sick, so I was able to check out the groceries instead of bagging the groceries. And there was a lady that came through the line. She was very well dressed. It looked like she just came from her tennis lesson. She was very nicely dressed up, like she did not break a sweat. She had the jewelry and the makeup and everything was perfect, and she looked very affluent. And she was on the phone, so she didn't have time to talk to me. And when I was done ringing up her groceries, she handed over her business card, or not her business card, but she opened up her wallet to pull out her credit card. And when she opened up her wallet, her little ATM receipt fell out of her wallet, and I couldn't help but sneak a glance, and I saw the balance, and her balance said $256,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that was actually a very significant number for me, because when I was in the music business, I generated probably about 6 figures a month. And when my bank account hit $250,000, that's when it was time to make a transfer. And that was a moment where I was just like, I'm working for $7 an hour right now. I will never, ever see that in my bank account again.
Wow.
And it also brought me to my knees. I just felt nauseous. I had to excuse myself from work. I went out to my car and I put my head on the steering wheel and just started crying uncontrollably and yelling and screaming at God, why? Sure. And got to a point where, okay, I get it. Enough of the pity party. Give me the strength, and I'm going to pick my head up. I'm going to do whatever you want me to do.
So I walked back into the grocery store, and the grocery store manager met me there at the door, and he asked me if I was okay, and I said, yeah, I'll be fine, and he didn't believe me, so he invited me up to his office, and he asked me, what's wrong? I said, just kind of explain the whole story that I just shared with you, and he said, Matt, if you want your life back, if you miss that, the lifestyle of where you were comfortable and you didn't have these money worries and concerns, real estate, that's the final frontier where the average person has a real shot at wealth. And he gave me this whole speech, and then he kind of opened up his whole life up there and wrote some diagrams and said, I'm going to retire here in a couple years. I'll have this pension. I got these apartment buildings over here, and this is how I'm going to live, and blah, blah, blah. So at that point, I was willing to believe anything, because I just did not have any option. I didn't know that. Why didn't he have this conversation with me before? And all I could think of was, I think it was my prayer out there in the car. And I was hoping that was the sign. So I followed through with it. I hit Google that night. And, long story short, I just started searching real estate, searching wealth, searching, just anything I could that was related to our conversation. And discovered that I had an aunt. And what do you call that? Estranged? When you haven't talked for a long time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the word. It escaped me for a second. And she was in the city next over from my city, and she'd been the number one real estate agent there for 27 years.
Did you have any idea?
I had no idea.
Wow.
And so I sent out an email, and we had lunch the next day, and then the next day after that, I was in real estate school and moved forward there. Long story short, I spent 4 years as a real estate agent. And then I spent the last 5 years as a real estate investor. And here I am. I've got 220 rental units to my name. And now I teach people how to do the same thing. And, life is really good and comfortable again. And I feel I'm back in alignment.
Yeah, it sure sounds like that. And literally, within 48 hours, it sounds like, or 36 hours from the time you saw that ATM receipt to from that time, 36 hours later, you were in real estate school.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. Right. And you had no idea the manager or the boss there at the store was even interested nor involved in real estate.
No, I just thought he was a middle management guy who was waiting for his pension, and he turned out to be quite the individual and a mentor later on.
Wow. So you've stayed in touch with him?
Mm-hmm. For a little while, yes.
That's cool.
I've lost touch since, but yeah.
You do more than real estate, Matt. I mean, you're pretty well known around the industry for, helping people grow, helping people move from wherever they are into where they want to be, to follow their dreams, and to reinvent themselves is kind of what you're known for, as well as real estate. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm inside my office in the studio so often, I don't know what other people are saying out there, but it's nice to know that people are talking. I wrote a book about my whole experience of being in the music business, crashing and burning, and then rising up again through real estate. So I wrote a book called Do Over, and I self-published that book and had no idea what I was doing. So I was researching all these different ways of how to promote and sell a book that you publish yourself, and I stumbled across podcasts, and the first 20 episodes of my podcast was just me reading each chapter of my book. And by the time I hit about chapter 12 or 13, I recognized that, the downloads were increasing pretty rapidly, and I started to get some response via email through my audience. And by the time I hit chapter 20, I recognized I actually had a fan base. I had an audience, and I had no broadcasting experience. I had no idea what I was going to do for episode 21, but I was forced to do something, and it's, evolved into something pretty magical, pretty special.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask you something about real estate. As soon as people hear about real estate courses, especially non-traditional real estate courses, or somebody teaching somebody how to buy real estate, me personally, I'm kind of a product of the 80s, Matt, and I'm thrown back watching late night television. Can I just ask you something, frankly,
Sure.
Honestly? Are those guys the real deal, or are they just hucksters?
Well, I don't know them. I can't speak for them, but I certainly have my experience because I've got my own real estate investing education now online, and I interact with a lot of my students, and I hear their stories because I wasn't the first educational program that they discovered. And what I think I've found, I certainly think there are people out there that are more interested in selling their education than they are selling their real estate. But what I've found is a lot of the information is, what I've seen is decent information. I think where they really mislead people is they make it sound really easy. And while they're making it sound really easy, they parade across the screen the abnormal results, like only their special results. And so I think that's a misleading part. Whether the information is good and bad, I haven't taken them all, but I've found that most of the information is decent. But it's how they sell it, how they package it, how they raise the expectations of their customer to take the money in exchange for the education. And once you dive in, you realize how difficult and challenging and time-consuming real estate investing as a profession can be.
As beneficial as it can be, and as rewarding as it can be, people getting into real estate need to know what they're getting into. They're getting into evenings, and they're getting into weekend work, and they're getting into late nights and showing homes and things like that, correct?
Yeah, you sound like you have some experience. It's exactly that. It's tough, especially in the beginning. It takes some real stick-to-itiveness to make it through that, to get to your first deal. But, once you get past that first deal, the mystery kind of disappears, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I did it once, I can do it again. So if you can stick to it and get to that first or second deal, then it becomes easier rather quickly. But the first hurdle it's a toughie.
I'd like to talk a little bit about reinventing yourself and people who want to reinvent themselves, no matter what stage they find themselves in life. And I know you can't get into it exhaustively, but You've become known as kind of an expert on reinventing yourself. So can you give us just a few nuggets on how one goes about reinventing themselves, tactics, mindsets, tools, and so forth?
Mm-hmm. Where I started, and if I were to break it down into a system, I didn't have an actual direct line from A to B, but in hindsight, where the things that served me the most was being really clear on what you actually did want to do. Thought that was very important. Second was finding a role model, meaning finding somebody who had done it before, and whether that was someone that you could meet or someone you had to study from afar, but find out how they did it and do the same thing in the same way, and you're likely to get the same results. That was the second thing. And then the third thing was be very intentional about who you surround yourself with. I think surrounding yourself with like-minded people is very important, but to take that even a step further, to surround yourself with like-minded people who are actually doing what you want to do. I think that right there can shed years off of your journey of reinventing yourself. And it's kind of like, when we were in high school, we all did dumb stuff that we did just because other people were doing it. And I think that concept of peer pressure is typically viewed in a negative light, but it can be used for good as well. It's just, I guess it's the way humans are wired. But if you find yourself in a community of doers, the people that are doing what you want to do, at some point you're going to feel the pressure of, wow, I better start doing myself as well. And I think just being intentional about your community, you can tap into that and use that for good.
We can't explain it, but there is something that I think is best described as success osmosis. When you put yourself around successful people, it just kind of rubs off, doesn't it?
It does. It does, because you don't want to be the only unsuccessful person in the room. First, and second, point, though, Matt. Yeah. And then when people start succeeding, and when you start learning how business and just progress is created, you just can't do it by yourself. There's such a network involved. There's relationships involved. And when you're around other successful people, you can tap into those relationships rather easily, as opposed to, if you're an outsider looking in, those relationships can be rather difficult to create.
Matt, why don't people follow their dreams? What are they afraid of?
I think there's only two reasons that people don't follow their dreams. Either they don't think their dream will work, or they don't think that they will. And most of the time, they have the dream because they've seen someone else acquire it, so they do believe that the dream works. I think it's just a lack of faith in themselves. What can people learn from you about those things, reinvention, entrepreneurship, and success, that they can't learn from anyone else? I think I'm going to border on the line, I guess, of tooting my own horn, but you asked the question, so I'm going to give you my honest answer.
Absolutely.
Is I don't sugarcoat anything, and I think people really appreciate the authenticity, that I set people's expectations appropriately, that it can be tough to reinvent yourself. It can be tough to start from the bottom and pull yourself out of that, especially when you have, say, a damaged soul or a damaged heart or damaged emotions because you were on top at one time before. And that can be, you can be bitter, you can have resentment, and all those types of things can really hold you down. And so I think when I share with people to, look forward, forget the past, look forward, and be conscious of the mistakes that you made and not to make those again. And it's not going to be easy, but it is going to be worth it. And what I really like to point out to them is, what's the alternative? Because the alternative will scare you right into action. Bagging groceries. Yeah, exactly.
Matt, what do you have going on right now, Matt, that you want us to know about?
What I have going on right now? That's a good question. I have what we talked about already. I have a real estate investing education academy online, and I am reorganizing, redesigning, and creating version 2.0, and I intend to launch that on April 15th. I have a giant long waiting list of people that are dying to get in, which I am very grateful for and I feel is very much as a blessing. And so that I'm working on, and I can't wait to share that with the people that are waiting. That's what I'm working on right now.
Cool. Well, this show is about faith, specifically your faith, Matt, and how you live out your belief in God. And everybody does that in different ways and kind of has their own twist on faith. But I think it all comes from the same source. How did you come to believe in Jesus Christ?
I was invited to a ski trip, I think when I was 9-10 years old with another family, because I did not come from a Christian family. And it was part of their church group, and I didn't really even know what a church group was at the time, other than it was a group that formulated a church, but I didn't know what happened inside the church, so I didn't know what to expect. But, we'd had all kinds of fun during the day when we were skiing, and, we said our blessing before we ate, and I was like, okay, I've seen this before. And then at night, though, when there was time to wind down, we'd gather around the campfire. It was a very postcard-looking type environment. I can remember it. And we'd start talking about this person named Jesus. And the pastor would tell stories from the Bible, and they were just very intriguing. And when I heard that God had given his son and put him up on the cross to die for us so we could be saved, even I think I was 9-10 years old, even at that age, that was a story that resonated with me. It really touched me. It was moving. And I think when we got back, I attended the first church service after that trip, and they asked everybody to come up to the front and accept Jesus in their heart, and that was like no hesitation from me because I had enjoyed that experience. I'd enjoyed the story, and I felt it. I felt the love within the group, and I think I felt the love from God. And so I became a Christian then.
At 9 years old?
Yeah.
Cool, man. That's very cool. When people come to faith in Christ at that young age, they go through their their late childhood into their teens, into early adulthood, and sometimes that can change. People start questioning their faith or living a life that they didn't quite intend to live when they gave their life to Christ. Did you, since you gave your life to Christ, especially as an adult, Matt, have you ever doubted your faith or even the existence of God?
Every day.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's been actually a struggle for me as of recent, but specifically, I've gone, once we moved away from that neighborhood, then I was away from that family, and I no longer went to church with them, and somewhere in my mid-teens, I always had that in the back of my mind of I needed to go to church, or I always thought about it, or I was wondering if God's watching me, does he know I'm not in church? And I always had kind of this little conversation going on in my head and wondering if I was having it with myself or if I was having it with God. And so I would connect with one family and go to church with them, and then go to another church. And that's kind of happened my whole life, just going in and out of churches. And I really I could not find a church that I connected with. And specifically, I'm speaking of the people that attended the church. And when you go through so many churches that all say that they're Christians, but very much have different perspectives and different dialogues going on inside of those churches, it's very confusing. And even as an adult, it's confusing. And so, I do not want to go to hell. So I do not want to be wrong about this. So I have this conversation with God all the time. I end the Do-Over podcast with God loves you and so do I, and I mean that. And it's present. We say our blessings before I eat, and but I do wonder. I do question all the time.
It's I myself, and in fact, you heard it at the beginning of the show during my introduction. I am a recovering atheist, Matt. And what I mean by that, and some people email in or they'll call in, they'll ask what I mean by that. And what that means is I struggle although I'm a rock solid believer in Jesus Christ, and I came to faith in a very logical, reasonable process. It just, belief in God just seems to make sense, and Jesus Christ appears to be the most logical representation of God on earth. All the emotional stuff came later, but that doubt is, and struggling with that doubt is really kind of what makes us stronger in our faith, because on a daily basis, Matt, this is just the way I see it. On a daily basis, our nature forces us to believe again.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you ever had a time?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I was confident for a long time that the more I questioned, the stronger my faith got. And then it got kind of leveled out and it's plateaued. And, can I be frank with you? Joe?
Absolutely.
Okay. In the last 10 years, my different interactions with the church were, I really made an intention to attend Bible studies. And, each Bible study started off with, this is the Word of God, and there's no room for interpretation. What it says is what it is. And the more we get into the Bible study, the more interpretation I saw, the more of the reading of the lines that we had to do.
Right.
And, I remember those 3 specific churches, and 2 were of the same denomination, just in a different location, had different readings between the lines.
Right.
And so I had these conversations with God, certainly this isn't the way it's supposed to be. I mean, certainly you've got control over this. Can you please direct me in the right direction? And I don't feel I've gotten that direction yet. But that's where I am today. So I have not let go. I'm still a believer, but I'm still looking for my spiritual home as well.
It's interesting about the Bible, Matt, because, there are some that are so stubborn in their doctrine that personally, I don't think they realize that the Bible itself, while eternally true, it's also eternally contemporary, which means that you can read the Bible today and it means, in a verse will mean something completely different than it meant 10 years ago or 100 years ago to that person reading then. And that's the miracle of the Bible. So I just invite you to continue to step in that direction, brother. I really do. I think it sounds to me your faith is solid, and you are certainly a solid believer, man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not letting go. I'm not going to let the evil one win. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But I would like to believe with much more strength.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. And so that's a pursuit, and it's an ever ongoing work.
Let's do a round of instant insight into Matt Theriault. Matt, this is where I'm going to ask you quick questions, and you simply respond with answers that'll make us feel like your best friend when we're done. Fair enough?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. What single person, and Matt, you're not allowed to say Jesus, had the biggest impact on your life?
His name is Stephen Gregg. As I was picking myself back up, I'd joined this network marketing company. And at the time, I had no idea what network marketing was. It was just, we actually sold real estate investing education, and they built a network marketing company around it. And it was a very expensive product. And I thought I was smarter than the average person because I had built this record label, and I had this $1 million record label, and I felt like I was in this company with a bunch of people that didn't know how to do anything else. And I quickly discovered that network marketing was something very different than running a record label. And as smart as I thought I was terrible at it. And I heard about this gentleman, a Christian, about an hour away, who had just stepped into the company, and he had made like $1 million in his first 13 months or something like that. And I was like, how is this guy doing this? And so I had asked my wife, I had said, you know what, I want to rent office space in his office, and I want to learn from him how he did this. And she said, okay, reluctantly, but she agreed. And I went down there, and that was just some of the biggest, it was sales training, but it was life training. And he was just a great mentor, a great teacher of just human beings and life. And I did attend church with him several times, and we had conversations about God. We had conversations about life. We had conversations about business. And I think it's funny, like every time I'm interviewed, every time I have a lesson, every time I'm in front of a room or on my own podcast, I've got something comes out of my mouth that came directly from my life and my experience with him. And I think so much of my current day success is really owed to him.
Are you guys still connected?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He's a really good friend.
That's cool. That's cool. The most exciting thing I ever did was?
The most exciting thing I ever did was complete boot camp. Going into an environment where I was absolutely terrified, didn't know my head from a hole in the ground, and was completely lost, a fish out of water. Couldn't be any more in a state of discomfort. And to go through a 13 weeks of that and come out the end a United States Marine was just, I remember graduation day. It was just a absolutely glorious day.
God is?
God is, the first word that came to my mind is great. And I don't know if I just said that because that's what I've heard all the time, but God is a compassionate and hopefully a very understanding soul, and will be a very accepting soul when it's my time to meet him.
My next big career move is?
Reality TV.
No way.
Yeah.
Is that in the works?
No, but I'm manifesting it right now. I would love to create some sort of reality show around my business. However, I think my business would just be too boring to watch at this moment, so I haven't thought out all the details yet.
That's funny. You know, it's interesting. The last show I spoke with Victoria Koloff, and she's in a reality show called Preacher's Daughters, and her experience with reality TV has completely changed. But it's certainly interesting, and certainly an interesting world, man. My girlfriend was on the show Flip That House. Oh, okay.
And she talked about reality TV. There was nothing real about it.
Right.
But that was her behind-the-scenes perspective.
Mercedes Torres makes me?
Comfortable.
Pick one. Lakers, Dodgers, or Rams?
Lakers.
Lakers, really?
Yeah, regardless of what it looked like this year, but Lakers.
The one thing I want to be known for is?
The one thing I want to be known for is changing people's minds about what creates freedom in this world.
In the past year, I paid way too much for?
Search engine optimization.
The best advice I could give Barbara Corcoran is?
Get back into real estate.
Get back into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Out of TV and back into real estate.
Yeah.
What single Bible passage has the most meaning to you?
The one that's the most impactful that keeps coming up for me almost on a daily basis is something to the effect, blessed are those that see, but even more blessed are those that did not, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that verse is escaping me as well. But I'll look it up and put it in the show notes, man.
Okay.
Matt, here you are, author, success coach, highly successful real estate investor, a real rags to riches story. What does success mean to Matt Theriault today?
Success means to me having the freedom to do what I want, when I want, and with whom I want, wherever I want to do it.
Finally, as we wrap up, Matt, what would you say to someone that is right on faith's edge, making that choice to believe or not to believe in God?
Read the Bible yourself and make up your mind yourself. That's the way God would want it to be, through his words and his words only.
Matt, I don't think we can say anything more than that. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Your honesty and your transparency and is just refreshing, man. I really, really appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
You bet, Joe. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate it.
Take care, brother. God bless. What a great conversation. I mean, what a great conversation with Matt Theriault. His insight on doing life over, his insight on success, and just, frankly, his transparency on faith blew me away. Listen, this is a struggle for all of us. Maybe that's wrong to say for all of us, but this is a struggle. Day in and day out, we profess to be believers in Jesus Christ, and sometimes we do wonder, God, are you out there? I believe he is, but let's be honest about that struggle. Let's really, really be honest about that struggle. Matt is generous enough to offer to all of the listeners to this episode a free real estate course. Just go to onfaithsedge.com and sign up for the show updates, and I'll send you a link to Matt's real estate course. He's been generous enough to offer that to the listeners of this episode. Matt's Facebook and Twitter links can be found in today's show notes at onfaithsedge.com/25. That's onfaithsedge.com/25. And Matt's websites are, and there's a number of them here. He has three primary websites. www.thedooverguy.com, matttheriault.com, and that's spelled MattTheriault, matttheriault.com, and you can go to Matt's real estate site, epicrealestate.com. And like I said, his Facebook and Twitter accounts can be found on onfaithsedge.com/25. Thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate you. You mean a lot to me. You mean a lot to this show, of course. Let me know what you think about today's show. I would really appreciate hearing from you. Just go over to the website, www.onfaithsedge.com, and leave your comments there. Remember, God is real, and eternity is now. Let's go out and live like it.